consistency. I think that's the thing that I would say from the last 2 weeks. I want to see consistent execution, because I think that's been a little bit lacking. So that's been the message this week in practice, and that's been the goal, moving into the next week.
It seemed like you played a lot of guys.
We did
last week. Does that taper down this week in a game like
Here's what I'll say. We kind of had a plan to be able to play multiple people and play a lot of different guys. I think as we kind of transition from the non-conference schedule into the conference schedule, I think we talk about, hey, we got 3 games of information now, in terms of our players, and so with that information, you're going to see the rotations change slightly, and what we want to be able to do is have some consistency with the guys playing together. Okay, so to answer your question, yes.
I was going to say how much that is to not only get the idea of what each individual is doing, but how they're working with each other, and which pairs maybe on the end and the middle might be the best fits.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we talked the first time we probably met in training camp. We talked about the numbers and the rotations and things like that, and so you get an opportunity to go play in games, and then there's performance and there's evaluation, and some guys are going to earn more reps based on their performance, and some are going to earn less based on their performance. And it's never static where it doesn't change. It'll change, but we feel like we got 3 good games of info, and we want to be able to have some consistency with some of the groups that are out there. So that's something you'll see.
Armorian obviously been making plays, but
pardon me.
I said Armorian.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously been making plays, but getting the Kai back a little bit into testing last week about half the game. What did that mean for you guys?
It was big. I mean, you guys who were watched this last year, I felt like Nakai was one of our best players on our defense and on our football team, and so to not have him early, was an opportunity for some other guys. I think it created depth. Last week he was a little bit on a pitch count, because he's coming back and hadn't played, and so we got him in there and we got him some reps, and I think he felt good getting out there. I think by the end of the game, he felt like, the speed, it's one thing to do it in practice. It's another to do it in a game. So it's great to have him back. I mean, he's one of our better players. He's one of our better leaders. That being said, Skis has made some good plays for us, and, in man coverage, and, had a big interception. So he's going to play a huge part for us still moving forward. There's no doubt.
With the national storyline being how this offense for your opponent is so high output offense, is there any added pressure for your group? And if so, how do you address that? It's somewhat of an elephant in the room at times.
Yeah, no, there's no pressure in terms of, what it normally would be. Like, hey, we got a game, we got an offense. They have really good players. We got to go out and do our job and limit the score. I mean, they've only punted 3 times on the year in 3 games, so they're averaging 1 punt a game. So, our guys know it's a challenge, but I think they're excited about the challenge. They respect their opponent. They're confident in their abilities, so we'll get an opportunity to go out there and compete on Saturday night.
You started to see some progress with Anello on third down pass.
Yeah. I mean, you still think about it. He's relatively still a young guy, right? He's a redshirt freshman. He's been a guy throughout the first 3 games. I think he's put some consistent pressure on the quarterback, and as a young guy, he's still obviously got a lot of room to improve. We're feeding him reps and getting him a chance to kind of get in there and get after it. So, but I've been pleased with where he's at. I like how hard he practiced. So we're going to keep feeding it to him.
I think he got a rep playing the run at least once, right? Also, yeah. So that was he held up okay.
Yeah, we can't always predict when they're going to run and pass it. So yeah, he got in there once versus the run, and I thought did a good job. And we don't have a problem with him playing against the run. I think he's fine. But I think as a young guy, as we're trying to spread out and mix up the reps and max up, we got some other guys that are a little bit more experienced in that regard. So we've used them in those situations and used him in pass.
I think it was 9 times that Michigan State converted on 3rd or 4th down. 3 of them were on 4th down.
Yeah.
My hunch is it goes to the consistency part you talked about earlier. But what are the sorts of things that are kind of holding you guys back from getting a team off the field when it comes to those?
Yeah, the majority of those were short. The ones, the twos, 4 of them were 1 or 2. And then the other 2, we got beat in man coverage. So we got to play better man coverage. And so, you get into 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, there's really not zone coverage. There are some zones, you mix in some zone. You're not all man, but we got to play better man coverage in those situations. So
how much, when you look back at the last 2 games in particular, did the running backs and tight ends maybe kill you in that pass game and the other team?
kill us in the
maybe not kill, but they put up some yards.
yeah in first and second down. Like I mean, you know, the BC ones, there were some instances where they ran wheel routes and then they checked the ball down in the flat, so we got to leverage a little bit better. YSU, had a switch route that we didn't get passed off between a couple guys. So yeah, I mean, to me, it's not necessarily the position of running back and tight end. It's more of just the consistency of execution. So
Based on what you've seen, what you thought the defense was, in say a month ago,
Yeah.
versus what you've seen, where does it meet in terms of your expectations and what you're hoping?
yeah, I think my expectation is for us to play better. So that's what I want to see, and I think the consistency is the thing that'll kind of, if we're more consistent, then it'll be to the vision that I kind of had. So when it's not where it's at, you're going to coach them better, and they got to be receptive with what they've been in practice. So that's what we're striving for.
Does that
So
make
what are a couple of specific elements of this USC offense that really concern you, or maybe different that the defense hasn't seen? Just a couple things they do really well that.
Yeah, I think they've got a really good balance. Compared to last season, right? If you look at them last season, because you do your preliminary studies and then you look at them this season, I think they're a more balanced offense. They have the ability and have run the ball pretty effectively, and then they can go vertical down the field and create vertical shots. So I think that balance is the thing that probably stands out to me through 3 games.
Is it tough with the way they mesh and hold you horizontally too? Is that part of it with RPOs? They do a lot of that, right?
Yeah, I mean they're obviously, they got some perimeter screen game. They got some nows out there. They get the ball out on the perimeter. They do have some RPOs with run pass options, and so anytime a team does that, it's putting you in a situation where obviously you got to be able to hold up against the run, but then also be able to tackle really well out on the perimeter. I think if you don't tackle well on the perimeter when those balls get out there, that's when they kind of hurt you. If you tackle them, you line up, you play again. So yeah, it creates some stress.
Aside from USC as a team, Memorial Coliseum, what's that experience like? It's a large place. How you think your players will be just kind of going into that actual space?
Yeah, I think it'll be. I would venture most of them haven't been there. I haven't been there. So, Coach, talked a little bit about with the team the historical significance of the stadium. He did that on Tuesday, which I thought was pretty cool. From Nelson Mandela to President Kennedy to, Olympics. There's been 2 Olympics held there. So when you kind of think about, hey, when you step out on that turf, you think about some of the people that have given speeches or played there. It's kind of cool. So, but that being said, it's a football game, and we've been in stadiums across the country, and you go out and the whistle blows and you play the game of football. So.
Thank you.
We mentioned how good USC's offense is. I guess we want to see your defense play better. Is it good to sort of just rip the Band-Aid and kind of throw them into the fire like this?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's always about what's the next opponent, what's the next game, right? So we got 3 games, and this is the next one on the schedule, and we're going to prepare for it. We're going to go play with great effort. So I think that's kind of how we see it.
Were you talking about experience against either Riley or their OC at all?
No.
And I would think in a conference setting too, it was like this staff that played USC in the past hasn't played against that staff.
Yeah, no, I haven't. No, not personally.
How do you, I mean, is it usually you kind of lean on each other to just kind of watch the film and kind of trust your eyes?
Well, what I would say is there's some guys on our staff that have, being from Oregon State. So
they switched it. I don't know if they played them in 22.
They played them in 23.
Okay.
So there's some knowledge.
Okay.
There's other coaches that have played against them, and you talk to, and then obviously you study them. But yeah, this is the first time.
What have you seen from Jordan Hall? Is a guy who's in his leadership role first time, but also trying to be a playmaker, 15 tackles in a game guy, and do all of that at once. What have you seen from him so far?
I think he's been very good in terms of his performance. I think he's played well, and I think he's been a good leader. He's voted captain. He's a junior. So I've been very proud of him, very pleased. I think the way he's kind of managed it is because he has high standards for himself. Like, he practices really hard. He asks a lot of questions. He watches a lot of film, and then he's very likable. Like, I think a leader has to have that cachet with the team, right? Credibility, trust. They got to know you care. you got to have the ability to communicate. And I think he has all those traits, and that's why he's a very good leader.
What do you still want to see from him? Like, what's the next step for him?
From a football standpoint?
Yeah.
From a football standpoint, I want to see him continue with consistency. Hey, you play one good game, you play two good games. Let's put together a season of like playing at a really high level. And I think just him continuing to expand on his game. Let's continue to be better in our zone drops. Let's continue to be better taking on blocks. Those are two specific things from a fundamental standpoint. So,
where are some other things you want to see consistency from the team? Is it being on the same page when they get a switch release, or feeding blocks elsewhere? What are some of the things?
Communication and execution, details of the coverage, and execution and details of the call. So, those things are under constant coached. They're constantly coached and they're constantly harped on. And as guys get in and get experience with each other, you want to see them be able to do that and have great success at it. So,
was communication at its highest point? Taking you back 2 weeks, 2-point conversion to win the game against Boston College. Looked like you did some sophisticated things coverage-wise on that one.
Yeah, I mean, they did a good job of getting some routes passed off, and then Skis did a good job, playing, from a man standpoint. I thought he did a good job of playing the ball and not turning the receiver, which sometimes you'll see the flag pulled on that. So I thought that was done really well. Yeah.
You want to see better man coverage in the short yardage situations. What needs to happen to see better man coverage?
Better technique, and then evaluate personnel and get the best players on the field. So, you got to play with really good technique, and we got to make sure we're always getting the right guys for the right job.
A lot of those guys you've only had yourself for 3 months, 9 months, some for 2 years.
Yeah.
Does that come with the territory, knowing that it's going to take a certain amount of time to get the communication exactly where you want? You have to play games to.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, we're not. Coaches are not patient human beings by nature, right? Just ask my wife. But so no, like I mean, the expectation is let's do it yesterday, So, but you're also realistic about circumstances as well. That's the fine line that you walk as a coach. You have your expectations, and then you have the understanding that sometimes things are a process. But the expectation is let's do it right now. So.
We talked all season about pass rush and stuff. Now you've got 3 games of data. I'm just wondering where you think it's at, where you think it can go.
I think it's taken a step forward, but I'd like to see it continue to improve. So, I think from a disguise standpoint and some of the things that we've done, we've got some opportunity to do it. And create some situations where the quarterback's held onto the ball and then the sacks have come. We've had a couple situations where Anella's been able to win. So I think there's a step forward, but we still want to see it improve. And again, it's a 3-front war. It's things we're doing schematically, things we're coaching fundamentally, and then from a personnel standpoint, as we kind of evaluate who are those best rushers and getting them in situations to rush.
You mentioned not being patient. Talk about how the players are going to prepare for this late kickoff. How do you handle?
Yeah, I think you understand that you don't want to. You got to move your clock, right? So that's kind of the big thing. You got to move your clock back so that you're gonna get up a little bit later and not be up at all hours of the day. Is that gonna be easy for me? Probably not, but that's okay. That's what caffeine's for, and like Red Bull and all that stuff. So.
When you mentioned kind of all the different guys who played early this season, I know rules may change, but has there been anyone that's surprised you and maybe overperformed from what you saw in fall camp to being on the field?
I think Malcolm Bell has done some good things for us. He's been a guy that has impressed late in camp, and then I think he's been pretty solid through 3 games and done a really nice job there. So that's been exciting to see. So he would be the one I would say that was probably the biggest surprise.
He's got a history of the Canadian corners.
Yeah, Ben St. Just, he's a good one. I think he's with the Chargers now. He was a good one. He was from the school down the road, and we had a kid who was up at Maine, played a little bit for us too. It was a Canadian guy. So yeah, we've had some.
Logistics, you kind of talk about your patience. A trip like this, how does that work for you? Are you on your iPad for 4 hours and you're just kind of trying to get some rest? How do you manage this type of trip?
Well, we're going to work on the iPad, there's basically a checklist of things that each coach has in terms of getting done, right? And for me, that doesn't really change from week to week. So there's that list of things that need to get done, whether it's here or whether it's there. You know, it'll get done. Maybe I'll take a little nap so I can stay up a little bit later to move the clock back. So I'll move it back because I'm usually a get to bed pretty early type of guy. You know, my wife's watching Real Housewives, and the next minute she looks over and I'm conked out. So, you know, she's asked me a question about, you know, one of the housewives, and I'm sleeping. So, all right.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.